All right, guys, so we've got our last tooth here. We're going to be drawing tooth T, which is a primary molar, a primary mandibular molar. And so at this point, you guys probably have this drawing thing down. So I'm going to kind of do what I did with the maxillary molar, and I just have them already drawn out, and I'm just going to highlight some things that I think can help you put your drawings together. So the two main things that we're looking at with tooth T, the lingual view and the buccal view, is one, the flared roots, which is a distinguishing factor of, or a distinguishing feature of primary teeth versus permanent teeth. So if we look both at these views, if we just draw a line straight down from the distal side of the crown, we can see how that root really kind of extends beyond that, and the apex is quite a bit over here, and it really flares out. We don't have quite as much of a curve of the apices in towards one another like we saw on the permanent molar. We just see much more of this flared look to it. So bear that in mind. When you're drawing it and you're plotting it out, it'll look really weird. And for both of these views, it's going to look really strange when you plot out the points, because it's going to appear that it's looking really, really stumpy, or something isn't quite working really well. A lot of times, you know, if you have your crown width and everything, you can almost start to get this really like boxy look, because it's just really hard to get the curvature down on these. These are very curvy teeth. So part of that is the flared aspect of these roots really coming out really wide from the midline. And then the other aspect of this, let me just clean this up here. The other aspect of this that makes it a little bit different is just that cinched CEJ, where the CEJ is really pushed in towards the midline, where the root and the crown is meeting at the CEJ. That we're really getting kind of this cinched look to the tooth, where it's really pinching in towards the midline. And so when you're drawing it and you have all of your points plotted out, really try to emphasize and remember that you're going to get this really accentuated curve going up into this first cusp on the buccal aspect and on the lingual aspect, but you're just going to get this really accentuated curve that just carries into these cusp tips. And then the same is true on the distal side, where we're going to get a very accentuated curve that kind of plays into the distal cusp for both the lingual and the buccal aspect. The other thing that I will point out here as well, just to kind of give you guys a bearing, this little triangle right here that I'm shading in, this is the the distal buccal cusp, because we're going to have our mesial buccal cusp, distal buccal cusp, and then this is just the distal cusp, right? So that is seen through kind of the little valley that happens between the distal lingual cusp and the mesial lingual cusp. So just keep that in mind. That's, distal buccal. So yeah, that really is everything. I guess the last thing here would just, again, kind of what we saw with the maxillary molar. Pay attention to the curvature of the CEJ and just how that plays out. This one's really, really kind of funky on the buccal view of tooth T. So I think that pretty much covers it for the lingual and the buccal aspects of this tooth. If you're able to get the maxillary molars figured out, there's not much difference here, and you should be able to, at this point, hopefully draw some teeth. So moving on, we'll jump into our distal and our mesial view. And the major thing that we're going to see here is on the buccal side. Again, we're going to have really kind of this accentuated curve coming up from this CEJ area, and it's going to be in that cervical 1/3 of the crown where we really see kind of this almost this very convex shape here to the crown, and then it's going to very quickly and rapidly move back towards the midline into the cusp tip up here on both sides there. It's not quite as drastic as we can see on the lingual. It's a much more graduated curve. But the biggest thing that we're going to see here is as we move towards the cusp tips, we're getting just a drastic change in that curvature to really kind of pinch in towards that cusp tip. And then the other thing is we can see, even on the distal and the mesial side, we can even see how we have a little bit of that constriction or that cinching up of the CEJ, even in this aspect as well. So just bear that in mind. And then the other thing that I would say that we'll see a little bit of is you do see kind of a little bit of kind of like a depression here on both aspects. So let me just pull up my image here really quick to double check and make sure that I'm putting this in the right spot here. But we do see a little bit of root depression here in both of these aspects. And so we're going to see that coming up, here more from the bottom, kind of like that. Let me clean that up just a little bit. Kind of like that. We're going to see a little bit of kind of just this depression showing up through the root structure there on the, or I'm sorry, that's for, I've got this flipped around, I'm sorry. So that's going to be on the, what I just drew is going to be more on the mesial side, where we've got a little bit of kind of this depression right up through here. And then on the distal side, it's a little bit more kind of over towards this area like that. And you'll actually see in some of the drawings that they'll show a little bit of a depression there as well. And then the weird thing kind of about this distal view is that you just don't have much elevation from, at least it doesn't look like it. Let me switch my color here really quick. It doesn't look like we have much elevation on this cusp tip from the occlusal plane, and that is because right here we have the distal marginal ridge is quite prominent, actually so much so that you can kind of see it as almost like a table. Sorry, I accidentally closed the program there. So back to what I was saying. I'll try to merge these videos together in a way that makes sense. But back to what I was saying. So we have this distal marginal ridge here that is visible on the distal aspect, and it's very high. It's very much towards the cusp tip, and so it doesn't leave us much room for these cusps, right, from right there. So just kind of bear that in mind. It's going to look kind of funky in some of the pictures that you see, but that's kind of an important thing. And it's definitely a drastic contrast to what we see here from the mesial view, where we can see a lot more of those cusps coming into to the central groove on the occlusal plane. So just keep that in mind. That pretty much covers it, I think, for the distal and the mesial aspects. And then the occlusal view here, again, is a little bit tricky, like we saw with the maxillary molar. The one thing that is kind of nice about this is we don't have, if you remember on our maxillary molar, it was very almost kind of rhomboid shape, where we had like, it was almost skewed like this. That is kind of more of what the outline was for our maxillary molar. This one is much more kind of balanced, much more of just kind of an oval shape here. And the main thing that we point out, and I think you guys label this, is that we have our 5 cusp tips here. And so that kind of plays into also being able to identify what we're looking at. So we're going to see, you know, if we have our two distal cusps here, our two distal buccal cusps, then that would make this the buccal side, and then this is the lingual and mesial distal. And so this one does have kind of a prominent central groove. Again, it's kind of wavy almost as it moves through the occlusal plane. So, you know, we make sure you kind of have that angular shape to that. That kind of helps. And then so these lateral grooves here that move into the buccal and lingual groove, they do kind of go up and over the cusp ridges here that would come down and meet like that. And you can kind of see, I'm just highlighting like where these cusp ridges would kind of be, so you can kind of get an idea for, again, like we saw on our maxillary molar, how our occlusal plane comes into being by kind of being made up of all of the ridges coming off of the cusps, and then we have those mesial and distal marginal ridges making up our occlusal plane. And then we have our kind of our lateral grooves here moving off the central groove. You'll see in some photos that they kind of come up and they start to fade away as they move into the lateral, or I'm sorry, the lingual and the buccal sides of the tooth. So let me just, I'll clean up those colors so I can draw that in a little bit better, and you can kind of see. So we're going to get these, they're going to be kind of prominent here, and then as they move up and over that shared ridge of the cusp tips, you'll kind of see it fade out, and we'll kind of get that look there. So kind of almost a crossed look on the occlusal plane. So that pretty much does it. This video I think is going to be quite a bit shorter than the other ones, thankfully, I guess, for you guys. You don't have to sit and listen to me. But let me know if you have any questions. I know I didn't go through a lot of how to draw these, but hopefully at least the outlines that I put up for you can give you kind of an idea of what you're looking for in terms of the shape and how to get the lines and everything drawn in. Good luck, guys.